Professor Norman, honored to have you with us this morning. What is the political future of Gaza?
Oh gosh, Tom, I think that's the question that is on everyone's mind right now. And it's certainly the one that I think Biden is really trying to push Netanyahu on these days. You know, Biden put out this ceasefire plan ostensibly approved by Israel, but part of that was to get the ceasefire and part of it was just to get Netanyahu starting to articulate what a day after might look like in Gaza.
Well, okay, but importantly, everybody's running for election and posturing for their domestic politics. Has the American relationship with Israel changed? Whatever the future is of Netanyahu or Prime Minister Sassower, whatever it is, has the future changed in American-Israeli relations?
You know, I think there's two ways to answer that. One is governmental relations with Israel. And I would say at that level, whether it's president, whether it's Congress, we still see very strong support for Israel pretty much across the board. Obviously, some exceptions within Democratic Party representatives. I think where we're seeing the shift, though, is with public opinion, obviously with young voters, young citizens in particular, and really, you know, on the more progressive wing, with the Democratic Party more broadly now split, essentially 50-50 on leaning more sympathetic towards Palestinians and more sympathetic towards Israel. So I do think that trend is going to continue, and it's one that lawmakers will have to grapple with as, you know, in coming years a bit more than they have in the past.
Dr. Norman, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on what's going on south of the border. We had an election in Mexico. Claudia Sheinbaum, Jewish, former mayor for the city, for Mexico City, at 30 percentage point win as president. Does that change Mexico's relationship with Israel at all?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. You know, obviously very notable that she is not only the first woman, but the first Jewish person to hold that office. But she has made statements before that, you know, that she doesn't agree with Zionism. I think she does identify, in fact, as like an anti-Zionist. So she seems to be, at least up until this point, upholding what Mexico's stance has been as being very pro-Palestine, you know, showing their dissatisfaction with Israeli policies. But again, she's been towing the line of her predecessor up until this point, and I think we're not really sure what many of her policies are going to be in general, simply because she's been you know, kind of walking the party line. And once she's in office, we might see some changes.
Yeah, I'm getting that same feeling, Doctor. I mean, just the uncertainty surrounding what her appointment means as president. But, you know, let's shift gears. Let's talk about Ukraine. Let's talk about the IMF funding that they received last week. I mean, that's good news. But there's another sort of summit, another fundraiser booked with Biden. Talk to us about U.S.-Ukrainian relations. I mean, what do we expect there?
Yeah, so, you know, I think it's a tough spot for Biden right now. Obviously, he got through the big aid package, you know, 2 months ago. That was a very long time coming. I think that's going to be the last big infusion of military aid, at least that we see going to Ukraine anytime soon. And as the war goes on, I think Biden's getting to a point of, just as in Israel, trying to say, what is the end game here? What is all this going towards? And I think those conversations are starting to happen more.
Professor Norman, to your claim to expertise, and I'm not saying this to be snide or snarky, I think it's a serious question. Is Hamas defeated or trending toward defeated? How do you gauge that? How do you measure that?
Yeah, so this has obviously been one of Israel's main objectives, and the U.S. right now is assessing that Hamas has been sufficiently depleted in the sense that they couldn't carry out a massive military attack, they couldn't govern effectively, that sort of thing at this point. I would just say, though, Hamas is so many different actors all at once. They're a military operation, they are a political party, they're a social movement, and there's a lot of just everyday people who identify as Hamas supporters. So I don't think the movement itself is close to being wiped out. And honestly, I feel like many that after the Gaza war, they will probably be able to recruit quite effectively, or a group very similar to them will likely be able to recruit very effectively.